What's up, guys? We're going to Kansas City, Missouri. We have a fight night card headlined by Ian Garry versus Carlos Prates. Big fight for the welterweight division. Gary's opportunity to get a rebound after that Shavkat short notice fight, but this fight was also kind of short notice. Not the same thing as the Shavkat fight, but Carlos was supposed to fight Jeff Neal on the last card. Neal pulled out. They moved Carlos to this fight night card. Ian Garry stepped in. And you have to give all the respect in the world to Ian Garry for stepping up on short notice to fight not only Shavkat Rakhmonov, but now he's fighting the dark horse of the welterweight division. Carlos might be underestimated as a future top contender, which makes him probably the biggest dark horse in the weight class. Not only that, we got Anthony Smith versus Mingyang Zhang in the co-main event. Giga Chikadze's back against David Onama. He's not fighting any ranked featherweight. Michel Pereira versus Magomedov is going to be an insane first round fight, most likely. Rennie Brown versus Nicolas Dalby, Ikram Aliskerov versus Muniz. So many good fights throughout this card. And there's a total of 14 fights, which is more than the average. The average UFC card is like 12 or 13 fights, which means there's going to be 8 fights on the prelims and 6 fights on the main card. The prelims start at 6 p.m. Eastern, the main card at 9 p.m. Eastern. So pretty much like the same time slot, but 1 hour earlier. Now, the prospect of the card, I would say there's 2. There's Ikram Aliskerov and Mingyang Zhang, and I think both fighters can be maybe in the top 10 at least in both of their respected divisions. Both excellent fighters, great finishers, and both their fights on this card should be amazing. The fighter of the night, there really isn't one, honestly. Maybe Ian Garry. But then the stake of the night, the fighter that needs a win, is Anthony Smith. He's on a 2-loss streak. He's 2-6 in his last 8 fights. And this is his retirement fight against a future elite light heavyweight. Or at least that's the way Mingyang Zhang has been fighting in the UFC so far. I mean, he's destroying everybody in his way. And then the banger of the night, the most explosive fun fight on the card, is 100% Michel Pereira versus Magomedov. 2 finishers who usually win in the first round and don't really have the greatest cardio after that, going into the second or third. There's a very high chance, especially on the betting odds, that one of these two is going to finish the other in the first round. Unless there is an adjusted fight IQ here, one or the other intelligently expects his opponent to gas out in the first, so that is what their game plan is going to revolve around. Be defensive in the first round, throw a lot of feints, body shots in the first, and drag the fight out into the second and third. But should be a fun fight regardless. But even in that scenario, there's probably going to be a finish at some point in the fight. Then the sleeper of the night, the most slept-on fight on the entire card, I think it's Chris Gutierrez versus Zhang Castaneda. Overall, just 2 good strikers that could put on a technical fight. And then the fight of the night is no other than the main event. Ian Garry versus Carlos Prates is a fight between 2 of the most technical guys on the entire card. And it's 5 rounds as well, so that should be a good one. And we're going to start with Chelsea Chandler versus Jocelyn Edwards, which, let's be honest, is probably the weakest fight on the entire card. It's maybe not in the fight most fans are going to be starting this card with, but Chelsea Chandler is the fighter who ran away in the middle of a fight against Norma Dumont. She's 2-2 in the UFC, somewhat well-rounded, can wrestle, can strike from her southpaw stance, has good snap in her left hand, but sometimes loops her punches, and there are counter shot opportunities on the straight line, just how Yana Santos dropped her, right? Chelsea Chandler would throw a looping right hook, keep her head lean to the left, and Yana Santos ducks in and lands a right straight, dropping Chandler. Jocelyn Edwards also has a similar kind of punching technique to Yana Santos. She's big for the weight class, has huge legs and a lot of power to push the opponent back with the front kicks. That can actually be a big weapon for her to keep the fight at distance and force Chelsea Chandler to explode her way in with those left straights and right hooks. And Edwards can land her counter punches at the center of the octagon. The only thing is Chandler could take the fight to the ground, which might throw off Edwards' rhythm and timing, but Edwards is getting a lot better on the ground. I mean, she submitted her last opponent, Tamiris Vidal, with a rear naked choke, and in the third round as well, so I'm going to go with Jocelyn Edwards by a decision. Then we go to the featherweight division between Timmy Kawamba and Roberto Romero. Roberto Romero was a lightweight. He only had 1 fight in the UFC. This is going to be his second, so might be the bigger fighter in there, while also having the punching power advantage. Kawamba got dropped by Lucas Almeida in the first round, right straight to the eye, dropped him. Roberto Romero dropped David Onama with a right overhand. He's way more aggressive, and I like that aggression against Kawamba style. Kawamba likes to move around and doesn't really engage the opponent sometimes. Definitely shown in the Lucas Almeida fight. He has a very quick jab. Excellent technique with it too. Good leg kicks. But as we saw in the Lucas Almeida fight, Kawamba just not really too great against the aggressive style of his opponent. And I think Romero could win the fight off of that. I think Kawamba has better form with his strikes. More technical with the way he throws a jab and stuff. But he doesn't do too well against aggression. Romero can do that and overwhelm Kawamba for a finish, maybe in the first or second rounds. But Romero can be very wild. He drops his hands. He doesn't have the best head movement. So he doesn't have the same kind of technique that Kawamba has. But he could win with pressure and aggression. So it's a close fight, but I'm going to go with Roberto Romero, dropping down to the featherweight division, the harder puncher, and winning the fight through his aggression for a second round TKO. Then we'll go to strawweight, Jacqueline Amorim versus Polyana Viana. This is a very easy fight. Jacqueline Amorim is just such a better grappler. Polyana Viana has decent, well-rounded skills. She can strike somewhat, she can grapple somewhat, but there are levels. And Jacqueline Amorim is going to show her the difference in grappling between them two. She has high-level submissions, very patient on top when she needs to be, but also fast to execute the submissions, and I think Viana is going to be multiple steps behind in almost every grappling exchange. She is the better striker though. Viana, I think, can win the fight if she's able to keep it standing, but I don't think she will. She doesn't have great balance. She's not as physically strong, but I think Amorim's going to take her to the ground and submit her in the first round. Then we'll go to Malcolm Wellmaker versus Cameron Simon. So Cameron Simon hasn't fought in over a year since he lost to Peyton Talbot. Malcolm Wellmaker hasn't fought since August of last year and has not had a UFC fight yet. This is his UFC debut. I don't know why they're doing this to Cameron Simon again. Simon's last two opponents are Christian Rodriguez, who is the GOAT against undefeated fighters, but not against someone who's lost before, and then Peyton Talbot, who just has insane knockout power and is a good striker. Now he's going up against Malcolm Wellmaker. Third tough fight in a row against a big bantamweight. Christian Rodriguez went up to featherweight. Peyton Talbot is enormous for the weight class. Wellmaker's like the same size as Talbot. And it looks like Cameron Simon looks like he's not as physically strong as these guys. Not to say he should go to flyweight, but man, he needs a lot more strength and conditioning in his training. Because if he shows up the way he fought Talbot, Wellmaker's going to run right through him as well. This guy hits it very hard. He's much bigger than him. He has very good striking defense. Picks up the guard well. You saw in his fight against Langston Sykes, which was only his second professional fight, by the way. Showed excellent striking defense at that level of fighting. Blocked almost every shot that came his way, and just one shot at his opponent against the fence. On the Contender Series, backstep overhand, able to deliver at that power even while moving away from his opponent. Man, it's such a tough fight for Cameron Simon. Simon's a technical fighter. He has good kicks, very good footwork, well-rounded, but I think he gets overpowered. Eventually that shot is going to land through for Wellmaker, and then that will eventually win the fight. It's going to look like two fighters who are not even in the same weight class. So I'm going with Malcolm Wellmaker by a second round knockout. They're going to Damon Blackshear versus Alon Tegeli. You got to go with Blackshear in this fight, man. He's more well-rounded, but has a massive grappling advantage. If the fight goes to the ground, Blackshear might submit him in many different ways. He has a very good rear naked choke, good ground and pound, guillotine, arm triangles, everything, man. He's just so good on top. But Blackshear might actually win the fight through his striking, as Alon Tegeli is more of a wrestler. He has some boxing skill. He's very short for the division. Blackshear's going to have a reach and height advantage, as well as being overall better than striking. He jabs very well. He has very good kicks, good distance management. Alon Tegeli is very basic in everything, and not really like high level with it, you know? A lot of what he does is to open up the takedown shot, and that's just not much of an option for him against Blackshear. Blackshear is so dangerous on the ground, and also better in the stand-up. The only way I think Alon Tegeli wins the fight is if he fakes the takedown and lands an overhand or something. I think it's the best way Alon Tegeli wins the fight. Unless his top control is just so strong that Blackshear cannot get any submissions on him. That would be very impressive with how high level this guy is on the ground. But I think Blackshear is very underrated. He has excellent striking, insanely good on the ground. I pick him to win the fight by a decision. In the beginning, I think Alon Tegeli is going to throw some punches out there, shoot for takedowns that almost get submitted. And from there onward, the round ends or they stand back up and Blackshear starts landing front kicks to the body, jabs, beams him with the right hand here and there. And then Alon Tegeli becomes more defensive throughout the fight, getting Blackshear the decision win. I think we're to Chris Gutierrez versus John Castaneda. Now, John Castaneda fights very well with the basics, different than Alon Tegeli. They both fight by the fundamentals and striking, but you'll see the difference with the levels of how they execute those techniques. Castaneda is very good with the fundamentals, whereas Alon Tegeli, not so much. Castaneda has good footwork, good kicks, good jab, good combos from the southpaw stance, measures well off of his lead hand to fire out the left straight to the body or to the head, double jabs and stuff like that. But he does give ground to his opponent to control throughout the fight. And Chris Gutierrez, if he has control of the octagon, Castaneda's probably going to lose that fight because Chris Gutierrez is an excellent kicker. Very powerful kicks. And if you're not pressuring him back, it's going to be very difficult to handle that. As is with every good kicker in the sport, you know? Fighters like Yair Rodriguez, Chris Gutierrez, Jonathan Martinez, you have to pressure these guys to take away their kicks. That is like 70% of Chris Gutierrez's attacks or kicks. He's not nearly as good at just using his hands. He needs to combine them with his kicks so he can be an effective striker. Now, he has a good jab. He has good footwork as well. Excellent in getting back to the center of the octagon. You saw that against Quang Lee. But the one thing about Gutierrez that can give Castaneda a good chance at winning is that sometimes he doesn't throw anything. Sometimes he's just standing in front of you, very defensive, skipping around the octagon. And that's mostly how he fought Song Yadong as well. And he needs to be throwing a lot more to beat Castaneda. So I'm going with Chris Gutierrez by a decision. decision. I think his kicks will win him the fight. He probably will have a lot of octagon control to help him land those kicks, and Castaneda has to be more aggressive. He needs to go forward, and if he does, I think he can win the fight, but I don't think he will as much. So I'm going to go Gutierrez by decision. I'm going to go to Evan Elder versus Gage Young. Two very good strikers, but Young has the much better wrestling. Evan Elder doesn't have great takedowns, not great takedown defense. The way for Young to win the fight is mixing up the martial arts. Throw some jabs out there. He has very good footwork as well, moving in and out, and that can help him to explode for the double leg takedown, getting the fight to the ground, because I think if the fight stays standing, Elder has a better chance of winning the fight. He has an excellent jab. He has very good boxing, good counter punches, great extension on all of his punches, good counter shots, and Young doesn't have the best striking defense, specifically shown against Quinlan Selkilde, who's by far the best fighter he's ever fought before. So because of the striking defense, I'm going to go with Evan Elder by a decision win. Then we're going to Matt Schnell versus Jimmy Flick. Matt Schnell is, I guess, making his return. I mean, he was talking about retirement. He's on a 3-fight loss streak, all finishes in the second round. Whenever a fighter is talking about retirement and then they come back, it's tough to bet on them, you know? But Jimmy Flick is just not as good as Matt Schnell, I think. Matt Schnell is decently well-rounded offensively. He has some of the worst striking defense in the UFC. Right? Matt Schnell doesn't have great head movement, doesn't pick up his hands that well to block punches, has very basic footwork, but Jimmy Flick is not that great of a striker overall. He's more of a grappler. Matt Schnell is also very good on the ground, so I think his offensive striking could inflict enough damage to win those exchanges, try to defend the takedowns, and ultimately win through that. He hits hard, he's willing to brawl, and I think that's more than enough to win the striking against Jimmy Flick, as long as he can defend the takedown. So I'm going to go with Matt Schnell by decision. The fight could be very technical if they grapple, but if it stays striking, it's not going to be the most technical fight. And then we'll go to Ikram Aliskerov versus Andre Muniz. And I'm going with Aliskerov easily. Defends all the takedowns, and Muniz cannot strike with him. Aliskerov has such an advantage in striking. He's way more technical. He hits way harder. He's a much bigger puncher. He has better offensive and defensive skills. Muniz needs to get takedowns to win fights because his jiu-jitsu is very good. Aliskerov's takedown defense is absolutely insane. So it's gonna be a very, very tough fight for Andre Muniz, man. This is a stylistic nightmare for the Brazilian, and it's crazy, man. Dagestan versus Brazil is such a big rivalry in MMA. You see it in every level, like the highest level, the lowest level, they're always fighting each other. I think sometimes the UFC does it on purpose. But yeah, defends every takedown and knocks Muniz out in the first round. Big rebound for Aliskerov after the Robert Whittaker fight. And then we go to Randy Brown versus Nicolas Dalby. Nicolas Dalby is a fighter you could never underestimate. He's been fighting for so long, and I underestimated him against Rinat. And man, did he perform. He should have won that fight and should be on a 5-win streak. He also beat Gabriel Bonfim. He beat Muslim Salikov, Warley Alves in a close fight. Randy Brown's coming off a decision loss to Brian Battle. But before that beat Zaleski dos Santos and Muslim Salikov. One of the best right straight knockouts I've ever seen in the sport. Like punching through paper, straight through the head, knocking his opponent out. And Randy Brown has that reach. That's the biggest thing going for him against Nicolas Dalby. He's 6'3" with a 78-inch reach and has very fast footwork. And Dalby likes to reset a lot throughout the fight. When he throws a jab or his combinations, he likes to disengage and reset, and that's very tough to do against such a longer fighter like Randy Brown. A fighter like Dalby needs to stay close to him and throw punches the entire fight. Never reset against Randy Brown, but that's just his style a lot of times. You saw that against Rinat as well. He could shoot some takedowns like he did against Salikov, but maybe after throwing some leg kicks to slow down the movement of Randy Brown. Shoot against the fence, hold him there, land some strikes, chain wrestle, take the fight to the ground, and try to win with top pressure and ground and pound. But if he decides to keep the fight standing, to strike with Randy Brown, I think the reach of Randy's too much, right? Dalby needs to be kicking those legs to slow him down, but Randy Brown has good striking, man. He's very talented in the stand-up. Excellent jab, good front kicks to keep the fight at distance, land that long, fast straight, and ultimately I think Randy Brown's going to win the fight by a 3rd round TKO. And then we go to Michel Pereira versus Abus Magomedov. Yet another Brazil versus Dagestan fight, and a fight that could end at the very first exchange. Both guys hit so hard, one-shot knockout power. Both very good kickers, very explosive and fast in the first round, but I think Magomedov has better cardio, right? He submitted Bruno Ferreira in the 3rd round, and before that, had a fight go to the decision twice. He won a decision against Warley Alves, and lost a decision against Caio Borraio. Michel Pereira against Anthony Hernandez literally gassed out after the first round, but the fight nearly went all 5. But he was not the same fighter after the first round. Now, Abus Magomedov looked good in the 2nd round against Ferreira. In the 3rd round, he was tired, but still able to get the takedown and submit Ferreira in that last round. Now, Ferreira, I think, hits harder, more explosive, and he's bigger than Magomedov too, but he's more wild. I think Magomedov has cleaner technique, has better counterpunching, has better footwork. Overall, just more technical in the stand-up. He just can't take a big shot from Pereira or he will get knocked out. I think he has more chances of winning the fight. He has the better cardio, he has the better technique in the stand-up, and he needs to just survive that first round. I think he has higher fight IQ as well, shown in his last 2 fights. So I'm going to go with Magomedov by a second round TKO. He might exchange in the first round if one of them gets knocked out, but I would like to think that he fights as smart, is a lot more patient and defensive in the first round, and then picks it up in the second, and if he needs it, in the third. Then we go to Giga Chikadze versus David Onama. Onama's coming down from lightweight to featherweight, enormous for the weight class. He's 5'11" with a 74-inch reach. Giga Chikadze is 6 feet with a 74-inch reach. Both have good power. Chikadze, of course, has a very good liver kick, excellent striking, but doesn't have the best cardio. And also, he hasn't fought since July of last year. Only had 1 fight last year as well. Onama had 2 fights and last fought in November against Roberto Romero. But I think Chikadze, at his best, before he gasses out, is a much better striker than Onama, like way more technical. He has excellent counterpunching, very good kicks at distance, good distance management as well, masks that kick so well, switches stances, tries to get the open stance against the opponent, very good jab, straight right, resets constantly to use his reach against his opponent. Onama hits very hard, he's very powerful, but technically he just does not compare to Chikadze. Even Arnold Allen with the footwork that he has. And Onama doesn't really move forward that much. He's not a super pressuring fighter, so he's going to be in the center of the octagon going tit for tat against Chikadze, which is the worst way to fight him. Edson Barboza couldn't even fight him like that. In a kickboxing manner, it's going to be very, very difficult for Onama to win that fight. He needs to push forward, he needs to pressure the fight, take the kicks away from Chikadze, and gas him out for the second and third rounds. If he stays in the center of the octagon, Chikadze's not going to gas out the same way. So I'm going to go with Giga Chikadze, who's crazy enough an underdog, by a second round TKO. I think he lands some good body kicks and then drops Onama with a straight, finishes the fight on the ground. And then we go to the co-main event. Anthony Smith versus Mingyang Zhang. It's crazy for Smith's retirement fight. A guy who works for the UFC. They're giving him a funeral to fight Mingyang Zhang for his last fight in the UFC. Building the next contender off of Anthony Smith. He's going to get absolutely destroyed out there. Smith needs to take the fight to the ground and submit him. Standing with Mingyang Zhang is a sure way to a knockout loss for Anthony Smith. He's just not the same fighter, not in his prime anymore. Zhang's only getting better with every fight, has crushing knockout power, has literally finished every fight in the first round. He has a 100% finish rate, and all of them are in the first round. Smith has a decent jab, leg kick, a good right straight, but he's slower, not as snappy with his punches. Zhang needs one shot to end the fight, and Smith just never really had great striking defense other than just moving away from the opponent, but Zhang's going to be faster than him too, so I think Zhang lands a shot in the first round and drops Smith and then finishes by TKO, which will make him a ranked fighter. And then we go to the main event. Ian Garry versus Carlos Prates. This is the most interesting fight on the whole card. This is the fight we all want to see. So Ian Garry is ranked number 7. Carlos Prates is ranked number 13. Ian Garry is the favorite going into it. Very interesting because I think Carlos Prates beats him. There's a big debate as to Gary's performance against Shavkat, whether it means both those fighters are just so good and Ian Garry proved that he is one of the best, or was it a fight that showed both fighters are probably overrated somewhat. They're probably not as good as we originally thought going into the fight. I'm going to be honest, I wasn't too impressed with that fight. I didn't think either fighter looked great. I think Garry in the 5th round, getting that submission on Shavkat in the 5th round was not great, man, for Shavkat, I think. I don't think Gary's like an excellent wrestler. The fight with Michael Venom Page was very close, and MVP just doesn't grapple that well at all, and still that fight was very close. So I don't think Gary's necessarily like some crazy grappler or anything. He's a striker at the end of the day with some grappling technique. Well-rounded, of course, as a lot of fighters are, but what he is best at is his kickboxing. He has very good footwork, a good jab, straight right, good high kicks, great linear movement, moving in and out, but Carlos Prates is going to have the reach advantage. Insanely long for the division, with a 78-inch reach, and there seems to be this notion that he only has a puncher's chance to win, which is crazy. Carlos Prates, yes, has ridiculous knockout power. He has finished every opponent in the UFC with one shot, but he's also one of the most technical Muay Thai fighters in the UFC. He comes from Muay Thai. He has some of the best hand traps, opening up his power to land, excellent body shots, excellent at using his reach, and Garry needs to be moving laterally to get away from those shots. He cannot stay on the center line when Carlos has the reach advantage and the one-punch knockout ability with very good technique as well. He needs to be moving laterally and mixing it up with takedowns. Now that's the only thing. If Carlos cannot defend the takedowns, he's probably going to lose the fight. If he can defend the takedowns, which I think he will, I think he wins the fight. Carlos has been training with Caio Borralho, who's a very good grappler. All the fighting nerds are improving their wrestling and grappling skills. Carlos is using it defensively to keep the fight standing where he is the most confident. I think Carlos Prates is one of the best strikers in the entire welterweight division, but with his ability to knock the opponent out with one punch, combined with the technique and the 78-inch reach, he might just be the most effective striker in the whole division, but he needs to take down defense. There's an issue with the way that Ian Garry moves as he throws his punches. He likes to move in and out with the jab and right straight, but if he moves after throwing the punch, he's still going to be in Carlos's range and get hit by Carlos's right straight. And also, Carlos does a really good job of pushing the opponent back. Very good with pressure, and we've seen in Gary's fights, him being the one who's moving away from the opponent. So if he's given control of the octagon to Carlos, who has the reach advantage, the knockout power, the Muay Thai skill, and very good hand traps to keep the opponent in front of him and open up for his power to land, whether a knee to the body, right straight, elbow over the top, I think Carlos Prates wins this fight by either a second or third round knockout. And also with the whole gym, the fighting nerds just destroying everybody they're fighting right now. 19-0 in the UFC with those 4 fighters. It also helps Carlos carry that confidence easier into the fight. Now the thing about Carlos is he gets better as the fight continues. For like the first 3 minutes of the fight, he isn't as sharp. He needs to feel out the fight first and then he's on. You saw it in the Neil Magny fight against Li Jingliang, Charles Radke, Trevin Giles, like every fight he's had in the UFC, he only gets better as the fight goes. His defense gets a lot better. He started rolling with Li Jingliang's punches after like a few minutes into the fight and started landing his shots a lot more precisely. So with the Ian Garry fight, he might need like a few minutes, maybe the entire first round to get started. So that's why I think in the second or third round is when Carlos Prates wins the fight by knockout. And he is the underdog, so he's a plus 110 against the minus 130 Ian Garry. But could be close. I can see how Ian Garry wins as well, especially if he's able to take the fight to the ground. So honestly, it's not a fight I would bet on, but I do think Carlos is going to win. Zhang Mingyang is an easy pick, minus 455 against a plus 350 Anthony Smith. Giga Chikadze is the underdog against David Onama. He's a plus 150 against a minus 180 Onama. I like those odds for Chikadze. Albos Magomedov is also underdog against Michel Pereira, plus 120 against a minus 140. Good odds there for Magomedov as well. Rennie Brown, the minus 275 against a plus 220 Nicolas Dalby. I agree with that. Ikram Aliskerov, easy pick against Andre Muniz, minus 500 against a plus 380. Matt Schnell's the favorite against Jimmy Flick, minus 180 against a plus 150. I agree with that. Evan Elder's the favorite, minus 205 against a plus 170 Gage Young. I agree with that as well. Chris Gutierrez, the minus 150 against a plus 125 John Castaneda. I agree with that as well. Malcolm Wellmaker and Cameron Simon is nearly a pick'em. Those are very good odds for Wellmaker right there. Damon Blackshear, easy pick against Alan Tegeli, minus 500 against a plus 380. Jacqueline Amarim, easy pick against Pauliana Viana. Minus 850 against a plus 575 is crazy. I don't think it's that wide apart, but Amarim should win the fight for sure. Roberto Romero is a slight favorite, minus 125 against a plus 105 Timothy Kwamba. I agree with that. And then Jocelyn Edwards is a big favorite, minus 300 against a plus 240 Chelsea Chandler. Definitely not a fight I would bet on for Edwards. Maybe parlay, but I think Chandler could win the fight. I don't think that fight's as one-sided as the betting lines are. But good card overall. Very good fights throughout. Should have some good performances and very good for any bettors out there. So I hope you guys enjoyed the breakdown. If you guys did, make sure to give it a like, make sure to subscribe with the bell for notifications, and I'll see you guys in the next video.